Welcome back, Tiger Bombers. It's your boy, Ralph. We're here at the process talking fantasy football, getting ourselves ready for the season. That's what we do. That's all we do. Excited to be talking to my longtime listeners, love a hard head, a repeat offender, and welcome to the new listeners, the first time offenders. Happy to have you. This is the process where we attack football in a specific way from the beginning and win all year, whether we're talking DFS or fantasy or what have you. Really quickly before we jump into today's episode, which will be about really quick notes about auction drafts, and then we'll get into some drafts pick'em. I can actually give you some scenarios. Would I draft this guy or that guy based on my feelings about them, everything we know about the offseason, about these new guys in new places and old guys in old places or new faces, however you want to put it. We'll just go over that. But before we do, where can you find us? www.tigerbombsae.com. That's the website for all Tiger Bomb podcasts, not just football, baseball, true crime, all that. But if you click on the process page, you can listen to this podcast. You can watch this podcast there or on YouTube. You can also find us at Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, anywhere that you guys listen to your podcasts on the go. Feel free to listen to the process as well. Just search for Tiger Bomb Sports Audio Entertainment, and we will pop up. If you guys want to connect on Facebook and Twitter, we can also do that. You can find me at The Process, TBSAE, and we can connect that way, both for Facebook and Twitter. But those are all the ways that we can stay in the loop with the best free fantasy football information, in my humble opinion. All right, let's get to it. Guys, it's really hot. Hopefully you guys are dealing with the heat pretty well. I'm in Los Angeles. It's burning up. So we're going to try to get through this without sweating through the mic here. Auction drafts. Talk about what we're seeing with these auction drafts out here. There is a lot of opportunity for us to win based on how we want to play fantasy football, because we talked a little bit about the process in terms of DFS and how that works out in drafting, first round and stuff. But really, we're thinking about for season wide building a lineup, that is more like a depth chart that's equipped with backups, right? So like getting your running back and getting that handcuff, getting those secure scenarios, things like that. So if we think about that and think about auctions, we should be able to do what we want to do pretty easily, because the temptation for so many people to burn that money so quickly is there, that we should be able to have a defined approach that is metered, and we can come out doing everything we need to do quicker than everybody else and having money left over, to be quite honest with you. That's a lot of what I'm seeing out there now as I go through my auction drafts, getting ready for the year. A lot of guys reaching in the beginning, then having to play the dollar game in the end. We don't want to do that. How do we stay a step ahead? So your round one guy, your guy you're most intent on getting in the draft, whoever that is for you, I would never go over, in any extreme cases, like 70 points, for Taylor, say Jonathan Taylor, right? 70 points, as that top RB1 supposedly. Outside of that, you're busted. Now, as it turns out, I haven't actually been doing that, but I've been seeing people spend about, fair 60 points or so, $60 or so, 65, 70 on that first round pick. I just did an auction draft today where I think I was picked like 11th or 10th. But point is, I was able to get Kelsey first for just $34, because people were already exhausting themselves with some of these top names off the board. There's so much meat there. You could come back in the second, get CeeDee Lamb in the third, get Evans in this scenario. So it's kind of like with an auction draft, we kind of let them go at it first. Let's just somebody you just really, really, really got to go get. Then you stick to the numbers we just said. Don't go over 70 for that first guy. But after that, 40, 30, maybe like 40, 45s, right? But point is, you want to limit what you're spending versus everybody else. And so for Kelsey, $34 is what I spent. Now, I overspent for Mahomes with my second pick, $40. I could afford to do it though. But as the draft unfolds, I start out with Kelsey, Mahomes, and then I come back with Debo Samuel in the specific draft. There's a lot of upside there. Stacked wide receivers in that. I think I have CeeDee Lamb as well in that one. But then my running backs are Penny, and I have his backup as well. So Kenneth Walker. And my RB2, blanking on who it is at the moment, but I've also got his backup. Not just another not great, backfield, but I have got all the pieces of it, which is most important. So, David Montgomery and then Khalil Herbert. So that's a little bit better of a scenario. But watching everybody overextend themselves and then being able to dominate the board, that's what you want to do. I'm sitting there with, maybe 5 picks in with like $90 left or something like that. So it's like you start to become the aggressor. And then, of course, I'm just trying to nominate guys that I don't want, that I believe that they'll want to fight over. That's the thing too, is I want them to waste their money on people that I don't have any interest in. So I'm nominating, even after I've had Mahomes, I'm nominating like Burrow, Herbert. Like, go ahead, fight for it. I know you guys want to fight for it, and I'm trying to draw it out of you. So we can be successful with the way that we play, with the tendencies that people have with those drafts. So if you've never thought about playing it, but you've listened to me before, like, you should give it a shot. There's easy money to be made with the temptation that's out there. All right, so that's just a little bit of what I wanted to say about auction drafts and how we might control the scenario. And not a long pod today, guys. We want to spend the rest of this time talking about some specific scenarios. Should I draft this guy or should I draft this guy? Very straightforward. I could do, some team preview shows and stuff, but I don't think you guys care about that. I don't think you want to know what I know about the Tennessee Titans. Tell me what we see is going to happen on the field based off of your research, Ralph, is what I'm getting, right? And so let's put that into practice today by talking about specifically 2 draft picks. Would you draft this guy? Would you draft that guy? Okay. Derrick Henry or Dalvin Cook. So if it's a standard league, I would probably go with Henry, but outside of that, I would go with Dalvin Cook. Be mindful though, obviously we know what's going on in Tennessee. The offense revolves around Henry, and it's going to continue to do that. But when we look at Minnesota, it's an evolving landscape. There's new coaches in town now, and so yes, they've got a great runner, but the running scheme is different now, and so Cook is going to have less opportunity to run, I think, because they're going to be looking at more short passes to set up the run. But he also is going to be able to get more catches. He can catch the ball, just haven't been asked to do that a lot. So that work will be there. So if we're talking PPR, half point PPR, I think you can look at Cook over Henry. But if it was standard, I would take Henry over Cook, especially with the touchdown probability from Henry that we see year over year. Not saying Cook's in a worse scenario, but his numbers might not look as good from a rushing perspective. But again, he has the chance to throw in those passes. So of those two, I would take Cook probably. And I know Henry's being drafted much higher than he is because of the insistence on the offense and revolving around him. But the offense is changing. Those pieces are changing. And of course, that scenario is same in Minnesota too. I think there's a lot of chance in both. The offensive linemen in Minnesota are being asked to block in a different scheme. And so not all of them fit that perfectly. There's that thing to think about too. But I think if you weigh the two scenarios, I'm still looking at Cook. Aaron Jones or CeeDee Lamb. So I would take Aaron Jones just barely over CeeDee Lamb because he's going to be featured in this offense, and we like that. There's no more Cooper there. And there are some weapons to augment him, like Schultz, so it's not just completely bare. But I believe in Jones's share of the work. I believe in his goal line work. I believe that Dillon is around, but Dillon is not going to take the job over. So we have to look at Jones as what he is, an RB1 in a power run game. We always want that. We want every piece of that we can get. And so that's really valuable in a draft. If this is the first round, I think you could get Jones. You have to take Jones first, and then you could come back for Lamb. I value Jones at his position a little higher than I value Lamb at his. Jones is up there for me, like within the top 6 or 5, 6. But CeeDee Lamb not so much, just outside of that. But ultimately a great pick. Not knocking Lamb. I'm just saying of the two, Jones is higher priority for sure. Brandon Cooks and Amon St. Brown. Cooks is coming off the board pretty highly, in my opinion. We should be waiting on him. I do think he can have a year that is similar to what he did last year. But again, we've got new system, new coordinators. But Amon St. Brown a little bit more sure in his scenario. And this is the same system. We know how they want to use him. We've seen this before. And I think the weapons they bring in, like Shark and drafting Jameson Williams, who's obviously not healthy yet, but having Hawkinson as well, this all just augments what they want to do with Brown. So I think of the two, I would draft Brown. Cooks should be going considerably off the board after Brown, for sure. All right, if we were to move forward to, let's talk about Marquez Valdez Scantling versus Sky Moore, pair of Kansas City receivers. Listen, of the two, Sky Moore, but the Kansas City receiver that I think I like the most is Miko Hardman. I've seen him have success without Tyreek Hill on the field. We have seen Mahomes throw multi-touchdown games to Hardman. I'm interested in that for sure because you can get him for virtually nothing on the back end. So when I think about Scantling, Valdez Scantling, or Sky Moore, well, my default thing is, oh, well, I actually would rather have Miko Hardman over both of these. But if I'm choosing between these two, Sky Moore for sure. Scantling, we know what he is at this point. I understand the value that he brings to this offense, but I'm just, until we see it on paper, don't tell me about something that hasn't existed yet. Sky Moore does bring more promise to this, I think. So of the two, I would take Sky Moore. Okay, Rashad Bateman or Amon St. Brown. I think I would still rather take Brown just because the offense is going to be a little bit more balanced and his role is a little bit more prominent. Bateman is not the number one. It is Lamar Jackson. And then after Jackson, you've got Mark Andrews. And then after Mark Andrews, maybe that running game, but then maybe Bateman. So I just don't see him as having a high enough preference in the order. You could easily take Amon Ross Brown over him. Okay, let's talk Johan Dotson or Sky Moore. Now, I would rather take Johan Dotson over Sky Moore, guys, because of the two, Dotson is going to be slotted in behind McLaurin. He has a clearer opportunity here. He has sure hands. He had a great draft combine. His resume in college speaks for itself. He's a good fit for this offense. I think he provides a nice complement to McLaurin. So being able to catch this underneath stuff, I love the promise of what he could be over Sky Moore trying to fit in a scenario where in a perfect world he might be the second option, but we know that's not even true. First option is obviously going to be Travis Kelce, but then from there they've got other receiver options too, presumably before Sky Moore. So the path to victory is a little clearer for Dotson. I would very strongly recommend Dotson over Moore here, and nobody's on Dotson. Dotson's in my little group of wide receivers that we want to take a chance on. Dotson, we want to take a chance on Garrett Wilson this year if it makes sense. We want to take a chance on Traylon Burks if it makes sense. These are the guys we should be targeting if we want to go after people. All right, let's keep rolling. Now, how about Gabriel Davis versus Amon St. Brown? A lot of steam for Gabriel Davis nowadays, but again, look at the pecking order and where he is. You've got Diggs to feed first. You've got Allen, who has rushing upside for touchdowns. And so when I think about pecking order, I'm going to put Allen as a potential ahead of Gabriel Davis because he could run it in and score. And that's an option before passing the Gabriel Davises. You got Knox out there. You got the running backs. Don't hate Davis. But again, St. Brown's preference in his offense versus Davis. This is what we want is opportunities. We want touches. We don't care more about touches than receptions because we're not looking at the pass. We're looking at what's going to happen as a predictor. We're looking at what's happened as a predictor of the future. Touches is a much more reliable stat line than catches because you can look at receptions and yardage. Some guy had 99 yards. Was it 3 catches though? Did they even look at him? Was it 3 of 3? Or is there some guy that's like 11 of 12, or he caught 7 of 12 targets, 7 of 14 targets? They're looking at that person, so we want to look at that person too. That's why we want St. Brown, the rushing attempts and the passes. Okay, let's keep going. So Travis Kelce or Stephon Diggs, guys. I'm still going to take Kelce here over Diggs because Diggs is cemented in his role, and he's not a terrible wide receiver. But again, I'm not putting Diggs above, say, like Cup. I'm not putting Diggs above, say, Chase. I'm not putting Diggs above Jefferson. There's just guys at his position I would take above him. So all that to say, Diggs is great, but I wouldn't draft him in the first round. I would draft Travis Kelce in the first round, particularly if you're on the turn at the end. Like if you got pick 12 or whatever, and you can come back with the first pick in the second round, taking Kelce, and whoever you get as a wide receiver in the terms of maybe Lamb, Kelce Lamb, something like that. Guys, that's how you win a league right there. Don't be afraid to do that. Won from that spot before. Kelce so valuable in his position, and is going to. Yes, he's getting a little older. At some point, that production will taper off, but we don't have any evidence of that happening now or soon this year, barring injury. It's full systems go. He's the guy now. There's no Tyreek Hill, as you people say, the Tyreek believers. So they're going to be focused on Kelce. We have a lot of guys to stretch the field, your Valdez Scantlings and such, to stretch get those defenders cleared out. So this is promising situation for Kelce. I like him over Diggs. Brandon Ayuk or Elijah Moore. So of the two, I would rather have Ayuk because Ayuk as a receiver has much more of an opportunity to produce over Moore, in my opinion, based on the fact that we know how they're going to use Deebo Samuel, not always as a wide receiver. So if you think about it, Ayuk is really battling Kittle as well for receptions, but potentially in some plays, it's like they're going to get the first looks. Those two, him probably behind Kittle. Moore, though, I think it's going to be more of a battle. Moore's not a terrible player, but the emergence of Garrett Wilson is real. And this is not an offense that I think is going to be able to produce a lot. And of the two, I think Garrett Wilson will have a better opportunity to be productive. He's going to have a chance to catch more of the under stuff, more of the quick stuff, more of the get it out. And that's, I think, going to be the hurried sense of the Jets offense. She'll always be playing from behind, always probably getting a rush too, this offensive line. So of the two, I would rather have Garrett Wilson over Moore, and I'd rather have Ayuk over Moore in this scenario. Ayuk holds much more value, but truly rather take some other guys over Ayuk, I think. Okay, Austin Eckler or Jonathan Taylor. I would take Jonathan Taylor over Eckler, and even if we're talking a half point PPR format, not just standard, because the production is there, his usage will be there. I know the Colts don't want to run as much as they did last year. They want to be more West Coast, and so shorter passes to set things up, but he's still going to get those goal line touches, which is king. Outside of Taylor, like if you don't want to take Taylor with number one, I don't think you should take Eckler. I don't think you should take McCaffrey. Those aren't great. I think the opportunity for injuries there for Eckler because of the usage like McCaffrey and the size similarities. McCaffrey, we've seen him not be able to stay healthy, so I can't sign off on using that pick with him. But if you didn't want to take Taylor, I don't have a problem with somebody taking Mixon or Najee Harris and like overall number one. If you're thinking of who would I take over Taylor, it's those two guys basically, essentially. So Austin Eckler versus Taylor, we definitely take Taylor. All right, Zach Ertz or Dawson Knox. I would rather have Ertz because Ertz is going to be that dump off option for Kyler if things don't work out down the field. Much more production and chance of production versus Knox in his role. As we just saw down the stretch, Ertz provided a nice option in the middle of the field when things were starting to get hot and contested and covered. We know that the Cardinals offense has a problem making adjustments. We know that out there in the desert, Cliff they don't make a lot of adjustments. And so over the course of the season, the second time you see them or the more you get it on tape, the easier it is to beat. But that's where the prominence of Ertz was most important because now you're forcing Murray and the gang to look at the other options on the same plays that maybe you wouldn't be usually taking. Whereas he wants to throw it downfield, he's got to look at the under now, and Ertz was there for him. So love that security blanket aspect. Dawson Knox, great player, great value at his position, but not somebody that I think I reach over Ertz for, just because we know who's getting the looks in this offense, and typically it's not him. You've got to feed Diggs, and then Allen, and you've got to feed, uh, uh, even the running back position, Singletary. Now you've got Cooks as well here. Dalvin Cook's younger brother James. It's a lot of mouths to feed, a lot of touchdown potential, but that's what you would be getting him for. Is you want touchdown upside. You're not getting him because they throw to him up and down the field all day. And so if he's not getting the touchdowns, then it's not worth it. We got to go with Ertz. Better pick. Final one, we'll say this is the final one here. Let's chunk off Josh Jacobs or J.K. Dobbins. Josh Jacobs is in a good position. I don't think he, as a player, he particularly wants this, soul role or body bruising role. He's really shied away from it when asked before. He doesn't really care about fantasy football. But he's set up well in this offense. What the Raiders and Josh McDaniels want to do in terms of running the football, they've got the personnel, but the line isn't as great. So if you want to go with Dobbins, I would say that's great. I would go with Dobbins because the promise and upside is there. I know he may be a little injured to start the year. I've taken him fourth round in certain leagues because he's coming back. It's Gus Edwards I'm a little more worried about. He has a chance to submit the role before Gus even comes back. So this might be not even be a scenario of which one, right? Jacobs, I think the scheme is correct. The coaches are correct. The offensive linemen remain to be seen. Like, it remains to be seen if they will be able to pull this off. But the scheme plays to their weaknesses. I mean, so it strengthens their weaknesses. It's just, does it hold up with these particular guys that they have at this point now? So of the two, probably a little bit more interested in Dobbins, I think. Although most people would pivot Jacobs. That's fine. You could do that if you like. But Dobbins is going to be a part of what I figured to be the most prominent run game in the NFL this year. So I would rather have a piece of that. If you don't want that, fine. Is that quick and painless? Guys, I think that's it. That's the stuff that I wanted to talk about. It's very important to talk about which guys should we draft, this guy or that. We're helping between the last show and this show put together a formula in your mind of what you want to do with rounds 1 and 2 and 3. And then from there, you are building the team based on what has happened already. This is read and reaction. Don't stick to these, rankings or whatever. At that point, you've got to start feeling out what do you need based on what do you have. And so very critical to nail, like we say, these first 3 rounds. And like we talked about in the first podcast, rounds 2 and 3 particularly, and then go from there. So that's why we do a lot of this. Would you rather have this guy or that guy to help you guys nail these rounds 2 or 3? There's a lot of these guys you should get in 2 or 3. Mike Evans, a lot of good value. CeeDee Lamb, a lot of good value. These are guys you should be looking for at that part of the draft to help cement your team. And we can really reach the stars from there. So that's all I have for you guys today. We'll be back in another couple of days. Maybe do some, team outlook stuff if you guys really want that. I know it's just more of who should I pick to win. So we can start looking at an eye to DFS if you want. But guys, as we get into the first weekend of the season, right? So after the Thursday game, getting into Friday, Saturday, then we will get right before that Sunday, the very first typical episode of the process. Well, we'll have our typical segments, right? Like Would You Rather, Housekeeping, Reload, and we'll get you ready as quick as we can. You guys know how to find me if you have questions. Talk to you again soon. Peace.